Okay, how are you guys? Hopefully you're having fun. It's not very easy to set it all up, but I realized that without the lectures, without me giving you at least some material, it is pretty hard to follow what was happening in class. So I will continue, even though obviously I cannot do it for an hour and 20 minutes every single time. That is a lot, and you probably won't even have enough patience to watch this kind of a super long videos, but I will at least try to give you some of the most important parts. So I would encourage you to, first of all, subscribe to my YouTube channel, because there will be all sorts of videos there related to philosophy and not just Philosophy 102. And also, of course, I would encourage you to continue with the homework and everything else, and watch the videos and try to understand the material. Okay, so let's pick up where we left off last time. Remember, we were talking about mood and figure of categorical syllogisms. Once again, why do we even care about categorical syllogisms? Why do we care about mood and figure? Yes, my cat is still in the picture. He seemed to be very curious about all the action. So anyway, let's try to ignore him. Let's go back to the lecture. So why do we care? Well, because we want to find out whether these deductive arguments, and remember that categorical syllogisms are deductive arguments, we want to find out whether they actually are valid. And remember what it means for them to be valid. It means that if we have true premises, conclusion will be guaranteed to be true. Now in logic this is important. So in chapter 3 we went over all these inductive arguments and informal logic, and we find out that we can determine more or less whether they are good or bad. But in terms of deductive arguments, we can actually have 100% certainty. We can be completely certain whether they are valid or invalid. And for this we need to use these techniques. Okay. So one of the easiest ways which chapter 5.1 talks about requires you to figure out the mood and figure. If you know the mood and figure, you don't even really need to do anything which chapter 5.2 talks about. You already pretty much done. Why? Well, because you can look it up in a table. There are tables put up for this, and so if you look in a book, if you look on lecture PowerPoints, you will see all these tables and you can practice a little bit with them. So we're not going to go over the tables, but again, how do you get the mood and figure so that you would be able to look it up? Well, the mood we did talk about last time, right? To get the mood, you just need to put it in a standard form, which is very important, has to be in standard form, and then just read off the 3 letter names. So like in this case it was I, A, I. And once you've done that, you got the mood. How about the figure? Well, to get the figure, you actually need a middle term. Middle term is very easy to find. You just look at your syllogism, whatever is not in the conclusion, because remember, in the conclusion you have your minor term and you have your major term. Now what is not in the conclusion? That's your middle term. In this case, paintings is in your conclusion, masterpieces in your conclusion. You have total 3, so one of them is missing. Which one? Well, clearly watercolors. So that would be your middle term. Now, note that it is to the left of the other 2. We can just mark them with X's, right? So this is the position in this particular categorical syllogism. You have your middle terms and you have 2 other terms to the right of them, neatly lined up. What are the other possibilities? Well, it turns out that there's only 4 total possibilities here. You can have it either this way, or another possibility is they can be both lined up to the right of the other 2 terms, the middle terms, to the right of them, or they could be on diagonal going either this way in which case the other two terms will be here, or they could be on diagonal going that way, and the other two terms will be here. So again, this is the 4 different possibilities you can have. Your middle terms either this way, or both of them on the right side, both of them on the left side, or this way. Note that if we actually strike the line through them, we have this nice little picture, which is the book also goes over. This would be a figure 1, this would be a figure 2, this would be a figure 3, and this would be a figure 4. And this is how you know which figure it is. So do exact same thing here. Strike the line through your middle terms. Don't you see that this is the picture? So you have the middle terms on the left, you have the axis on the right, middle terms on the left, axis on the right. So this is your figure. So that would be IAI3. And this is how you find your figure. For you, I guess you're not going to have to remember it. You can just look it up right away. For people who do have to remember it, they would have to draw mentally something like this, and then just remember that this is how you determine the figure. Okay, so we got the mood and the figure. What's next? Like I said, you can look it up in a table. Back in medieval days, they also were doing the exact same thing, but they did not have any way to look it up in a table because books were expensive. They didn't have as many books. So what did they do? They actually had a little song. This little song helps them to remember all these different possible combinations, the mood combination of letters. And they were chanting this song in a classroom so that they could actually memorize it, and then they could just repeat it in their head and figure it out without a table. But either way, with the table or without a table, that actually doesn't give you as much as we would like to have. Why? Because you may still wonder, how did they put it in these tables? How did they come up with a song? How do we still know that this is a valid syllogism? Even though it's nice to have all these different tables to look up, but how to determine it without a table? Is there a way? And this is where 5.2 comes in and the Venn diagrams come in. Okay, 5.2. So now we will actually learn how to evaluate syllogisms, categorical syllogisms with Venn diagrams. Remember what you were already again doing Venn diagrams in chapter 4, and you hopefully understand how they work. This is the key to being able to do it in chapter 5.2, because if you don't remember what Venn diagram belongs to what categorical proposition, then you will be confused. If you do, it is very easy. So remember, we were doing it with just 2 of them, right? We had A, E, I, and O. In all 3 cases, we were drawing the circles A, E, I, O. The circles for Boolean were shaded here and here, and we had X here and X here. This is our drawings. Remember what they mean. They actually mean that this part is completely blocked. There cannot be anything there. This is your subject term, predicate term. There's at least one thing here. There's at least one thing here. Now, for Boolean standpoint, we don't actually know whether there is anything here or here, but if we go with Aristotelian, we do have to assume something there, and for that we put an X with a circle. That means we are assuming the existence. Whether this thing actually does exist, remember, it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about Tom Cruise's movies, yes, they do exist. If you're talking about unicorns, no, they don't exist. And you cannot assume their existence either, because they don't exist. So that's just not going to work. Okay. So this is the key to 5.2. you do need to remember it, and then you should follow a particular rules, because in 5.3 we will have not 2 but 3 circles. Why 3? Well, because we're working with categorical syllogisms and they have 2 premises and 1 conclusion. Total of 3 circles. This is how you draw these circles. You have 2 of them on the bottom and 1 of them on top. How do you name them? Well, of course, when you actually have terms, you can use different letters. But this will always be whatever is your subject term, this will always be whatever is your predicate term, and this will always be your middle term. What's your subject term and predicate term? Look at the conclusion. Whatever is on the left in the conclusion is your subject term, whatever is on the right is your predicate term. And then you should follow the following rules. Marks, shading, or placing an X entered only for the premises. You do not do anything for the conclusion at all. You inspect it for the conclusion. If the argument contains a universal premise, and this is very important, you do it first. If it has 2 universal premises, you just start on top, whichever one comes first. If it doesn't have any universal premises, again you just start on top. But if one of them is universal, you have to start with that premise. And if that premise is second, you still have to start with it. Otherwise, in all other cases, you just start on top. When entering the information contained in the premise, one should concentrate on the circles corresponding to the 2 terms in the statement. While the third circle cannot be ignored altogether, it should be given only minimal attention. What does it mean? Well, that means that essentially you do them one by one. If this is your 2 premises, you first do these 2, and you completely ignore the other one. If this is your 2 premises, you first do these 2, and again you kind of ignore this one. And you never do these 2 because it is the conclusion. So it's either these 2 or these 2. Okay, let's do some examples that will hopefully help us understand it. Now first, the Boolean standpoint. So what is the example in the book? The first one is this. Okay, so the first one is no PRM, all SRM, no SRP. Note that they already named them very nicely. They put S and P on the bottom, as they should be, subject and predicate term, and M stands for middle term, whatever that may be. So how do you draw that? Again, first thing you do, you figure out, are there universal premises? Yes, in this case, both of them are universal. And remember, universal are these 2, A and E. So this is E, this is A, both universal. So both of these premises are universal. Therefore, you can start from the top. You start from no PRM. Now, what is your P, what is your M here? Well, this is your P, this is your M. Right? This is just what it says. How would you know otherwise? Well, whatever is your middle term is your M, whatever is your predicate in the conclusion, that is your P. Okay. You have these 2 circles, circle M and circle P. Now, you just repeat the picture for E preposition. See, for E, the middle part is shaded. So you shade that middle part. Essentially, this is exactly the same picture, right? Except that it is here now. And you also can see it here, right? So you do shade that entire part. Make sure that you ignore this line which goes through it too, because this line actually not here. The S circle is not here. That's part of the S circle. Okay, so this is the first part you've done with this premise. Now what about next one? Next one is all S R M. So it is an A. This is your A. We're still checking it first from the Boolean, so we're kind of ignoring this red part altogether, because that only kicks in if you look at Aristotelian standpoint. Okay, so this is your M circle and this is your S circle. You're supposed to shade that entire part of your S. Now here they called S and P, here they called S and M, so S is still your S. You are shading this entire part here. That would be that entire part here. And note that you do shade this as well. Why do you shade this part? Well, because this line kind of not here. It's line of the P circle. P circle you are ignoring at the moment. Okay, so now what? Well, now actually you are done. All you need to do now is to investigate whether your conclusion is supported. You already have your premises. The question is the conclusion supported? Your conclusion is no S R P. So this is your S circle, this is your P circle. What picture do you look for? Well, this one, because it is an E, right? No S R P is E type of proposition. So this is what you need to have. You need to have this part here, which you can call your area of interest, completely shaded. Where is it here? Well, here it is. This is the two circles, right? This is the part. Is it shaded? Oh yes, it is. Look at it. It is shaded. It's completely shaded, just like you need. What does it mean? It means it is valid. Isn't it great? Okay. So basically this is the procedure. Let's look at something with one of the examples which has particular premise. Okay. Okay. So we're given this syllogism, some P or M, all M or S, some S or P. And we need to evaluate it and check whether it is valid or not valid. How do we do that? Again, the first thing you do is you draw the circles. And you name them S, P, and M in this case because this is your S and P, whatever is in the conclusion. Suppose, for example, by the way, it was not S and P. Suppose you're given something where it would be like X and Y. Then you would call this X and Y. Right? Because the letters themselves don't matter. Whatever is in your conclusion, this is your minor and major term, so they will always be here. Okay, but in this case, it's nice and easy. Your subject term is called S, your predicate term is called P. Lovely. Now what do? Now you look again whether you have a universal premise. Actually you do. This one is universal. So you have to start with this premise. Even though it comes second, but you have to start with it. All M are S. Now, this is the premise we are looking for. Where is it here? Well, this is your M, this is your S, right? So this is actually these two circles, not the other two, these two, M and S. Lovely. All M are S. Now you have to draw your diagram here and note that where are they here? Well, again, this is the two circles you have, one and the other one. You're ignoring the third one for the moment. This is your S and M circles. You are evaluating this premise. Okay, this is an A premise. A, you have to shade your S and keep your P clean. Now in this case, your S actually would be your M. Why? Because it's on the left side, right? So this is your subject term. This is your predicate term. Don't get confused that they called M and S. This is still your subject term, what's on the left. This is still your predicate term, what's on the right. So this would be your subject term. So you have to shade it just like it is here, right? That entire part is shaded. So this is the part. You see, you kind of twisted it this way. So on the bigger picture, this would be the part to shade. Right, the entire part. This part you actually keep clean. Right? You just copy this picture. Now you can do your other premise, which is first, but you're doing it second because it's not universal. You will see why in a second. So some P are M. This is I, right? So you need to put an X between them, between P and M. This is your P, this is your M. What is the area where you put an X? This is the area. But note that half of it is already shaded. Where do you put an X now? You put it where whatever part is left. You put it right here. If you didn't have that shading, you wouldn't know exactly where to put it, so you would have to put it on that line in the middle there, because that line makes a lot of difference. Now when you look at the conclusion, some S are P, that actually helps you tremendously, because is it supported? This is what you need. You need an X in this area here. And look, you do actually have this X here. So this is again valid. Now if you started with another premise, that would not happen, because this entire part would be empty. And then you would have to put your X here. And that would mean it could be either here or here, and that would make it invalid. Why? Because it's ambiguous. If it's here, then it is invalid. If it's here, then it is valid. But if it is ambiguous, remember, it has to be strict necessity. You have to be 100% sure. If you're not 100% sure, it's junk. It's no good for anything. In that case, it would be invalid. But in our case, once we started from this premise, it kind of pushed us across this line. And we're no longer able to put an X here, because this is already blocked. And we are forced to put it here, and when we put it here, that makes the conclusion clearly valid. So now we know it actually is a valid argument. Great. Now, this is Boolean standpoint. What do we do in Aristotelian standpoint? In Aristotelian standpoint, it actually makes it just a little bit more complicated. Not tremendously so. I hope you do the exercises and you get the Boolean standpoint well enough so that you could understand it, so that you could move on to Aristotelian. Now in Aristotelian, the first thing you do, you also evaluate it from the Boolean. Because if it's valid from the Boolean, there's no need to do anything else. You don't need to draw any additional axes or whatever. But if it's not, then you have to do a few other things.